Chicago's Morning Answer with Dan and Amy continues now, and make sure to stay tuned to catch me, Mike Gallagher, coming up at 9, only on AM 560, The Answer.
Been doing some research, Dan and
I. Yeah. Well, you were so taken by the Carlos Correa proposal to his girlfriend after the Astros won the championship yesterday.
She has a name, Daniela Rodriguez, former Miss Texas 2016.
Yeah.
So
right.
we're just doing some research, seeing
Nice rock you put on her finger.
Yeah.
We were talking to Erica Komisar, the psychoanalyst from New York, who's wrote this book, Being There, that's creating quite a stir about motherhood. And she said her next book is about adolescence. 13 to 29, we got a text from 708. Dr. Komisar is onto something. My husband was a child until he was 32. So maybe that second book will do better than I thought. Okay, we're moving from motherhood and the politics of that, of sorts, to the update on the terrorist attack in Manhattan. The Uzbekistan national who ran down 8 people, murdered 8 people in New York, injured another 11. We know a little bit more about him, and we, of course, know how he got into this country, which is he was a lottery winner, the diversity lottery. President Trump addressed the diversity lottery. That's been a 25-year part of immigration law in this country, and he doesn't want it to make it to a 27 year, 1990. He doesn't want to make it to a 28th year.
I am today starting the process of terminating the diversity lottery program. I'm going to ask Congress to immediately initiate work to get rid of this program. Diversity and diversity lottery. Diversity lottery sounds nice. It's not nice. It's not good. It's not good. It hasn't been good. We've been against it.
And somebody who agrees with him is James Drake, who spoke to Fox News. Mr. Drake is the father of Darren Drake, who was one of those murdered in that terrorist attack on the bike path along the Hudson River. Mr. Drake on the topic.
What do I think about him?
Yeah.
I think that he should serve the rest of his life in solitary. That's exactly the way I feel. Don't let him get communication with anybody. It's these people. They come to the country and they hurt us. I mean, what do they expect? I mean, of course, there's a war going on between America and ISIS and Al Qaeda. Of course, there's a war going on, but I just think that vetting should be a lot more difficult. To allow these people to come into the country, especially a single man. I understand he was married, living in Patterson, but I think that when he came in as as one person, but I'm not sure of that. Matter of fact, we have Syrian neighbors across the street. I love them. I love the lady like my sister. Mm-hmm. They wouldn't hurt a fly. But you get these radicals, and, my son is the victim.
More on this topic. We're pleased to be joined by our friend Michelle Malkin, senior editor for Conservative Review, political commentator, and author extraordinaire. Michelle, thanks for being with us. Appreciate it.
Thanks, Dan.
So what about what Mr. Drake had to say about, vetting rather than lottery for the sake of diversity?
Well, everything old is new again. 15 years ago when Invasion came out, which was my very first book on all of the failures of our immigration system, every door, front, back and side door, the diversity visa lottery was a big focus of mine. And a lot of people don't understand the history of this program. You've got a lot of instant experts now on the airwaves blaming one party or the other when, in fact, this was a bipartisan creature.
Right.
It was the brainchild of Teddy Kennedy, Chuck Schumer certainly was a co-sponsor, but there were many Republicans who backed this program as well, and it was George Herbert Walker Bush who signed it into law. And as I reported in Invasion, just several months after the 9/11 terrorist attacks, there was a diversity visa lottery winner, Hesham Hadayet, who walked up to the El Al Israeli airline counter at LAX and shot 2 people to death. And people were shocked to learn that the background checks involved in the diversity visa lottery system were almost non-existent, and that once you won one of these golden tickets, that you and all of your immediate family, including your spouse and unmarried children under the age of 21, no matter where they were born, were able to get these tickets as well and a pathway to American citizenship. And in fact, Hesham Hadayet was on his way to American citizenship when he shot people up in a clear jihad attack. And so over the last 15 years, there have been these lame attempts to try and kill off the program. It was wrapped into the Gang of Eight amnesty plan, but that's a disgrace as well. To condition the end of this ill-conceived program on a massive illegal alien amnesty and to tie it together to that and have that be the only way that the program would have been killed, it's insane to think of the idea that we should hand out like Pez candy visas without any regard to the skill set or affinity toward American values. It's everything that's wrong with the immigration system, and yet when the Republicans were in power previously and had control of all of the branches of government and could have done something about it, they didn't. They are just as culpable as Democrats in allowing this program to happen. And Dan and Amy, when I first called attention to it 15 years ago in an interview on C-SPAN Book Notes with Brian Lamb, I asked, well, how many other people have to die before we realize this is a stupid idea and kill it off? And we got the answer this week, at least 8 more people.
So you know about this diversity visa lottery, and thank goodness you do. When somebody wins that, are they vetted at all, or how does the process work?
Well, the background system is a joke, and the federal government has known it for years. In fact, the General Accounting Office had issued a report in 2008 talking about how the background system, check system, was very shoddy and easily cheated. It required a high school diploma, which the GAO discovered was rampant with fake documents and the laxity, so much so that the GAO in 2008 declared the program a, quote, national security risk, and yet nothing was done about it.
And so in your most recent piece, Alu Akbar-itis, America's Deadly and Debilitating Disease, you recount a comment from former Director of National Intelligence James Clapper, where he said it's hard to comprehend what moves a human being to do that to another human being regarding terrorist attacks. And it's actually not that hard to comprehend. And so your point is, even our professional national security personnel it is cowered by the bigot baiting of the left, and that turns out to be very dangerous, in fact, deadly.
Yes, it does. And when you have jihad denial, of course it is civilizationally suicidal. And when you have programs like the diversity visa lottery that do not vet all of its applicants for their extremism in their ideology, of course we're going to get results like we got this week. And in particular regard to what I diagnosed as Allahu Akbar-itis, it's not simply a condition that is suffered by all of us who see this willful blindness to Islamic extremism, but of course it's something that seems to permeate or to metastasize in the liberal media as well as academia. This immediate rush in the wake of clear and explicit jihad attacks to explain away the battle cry, the call of death, for jihad operatives around the world. Allahu Akbar does not mean, quote unquote, God is great. That is not the literal translation, and that is not the words that came out of the mouths of the jihadists yesterday or so many of these cases that I've chronicled, unfortunately, for years. It means kill all infidels. I mean, do these people not listen to Nidal Hassan? I mean, after the Fort Hood massacre, he had a PowerPoint that he had presented to officials, higher-ups at the Pentagon, where he was explaining exactly why there's this imperative to kill infidels and the inner conflict that Muslim soldiers in particular would have in serving in the U.S. military when they had higher imperatives. And even then, even though he was telling it to their faces, they refused to see and hear.
Well, Jake Tapper on CNN said Allahu Akbar means God is great, and it's used at weddings and celebrations.
Yes, and that is a beautiful phrase, and certainly it is uttered as an utterance of peace many times. But to emphasize that in the face of the utterance of Allahu Akbar by the Muslim monsters who decapitated Nick Berg and Afia Siddiqui, who is the convicted Al-Qaeda scientist, or Nidal Malik, who I mentioned, or the machete-wielding murderers who beheaded a soldier in daylight in London, or more recently, a couple of cases in Fresno and in Minneapolis where jihadists were uttering this in the courtroom as they were killing people. It is not a beautiful phrase when it is uttered by people who are intent on killing innocents, who don't believe in the same religion they do.
Related story out yesterday, these documents that were released from Osama bin Laden's computers and personal effects, and this 19-page memo that documented to this point, at least either unknown or just undisclosed relationship between Al-Qaeda and our new partner in peace, the lead state sponsor of terrorism in the world, Iran, which the previous administration has provided a glide path to nuclearization. What did you make of that revelation about Al-Qaeda's linkage to Iran?
Yeah, well, it's not a surprise. People have been warning about this for years, and there was sort of a disillusioned comfort that somehow the political disagreements would trump and not be transcended by an overall imperative of Islamic imperialism, and it's just one more warning flag about our need to understand the Quranic roots of Islamic jihad. You've got left-wing ideologues, and that includes Barack Obama himself, who've tried to explain away all of these acts of murderous jihad as somehow stemming from poverty or a lack of tolerance and understanding. And that kind of deliberate whitewashing of jihad is what's going to get more people killed. And thank goodness, I have had my disagreements with President Trump, but on this, he does have a sense of both historical and moral clarity, and he has people around him who certainly understand it. And in terms of translating that to policy, I think one of the most important things he's done is stand by his imperative to have extreme vetting in our immigration processes, and then yesterday, of course, finally taking, I think, real concrete steps to eliminate the diversity visa program. She
is Michelle Malkin, senior editor for Conservative Review, political commentator, author. You can find her work at michellemalkin.com. Michelle, thanks as always for joining us. Appreciate it.
Thanks, appreciate it.
And she joined us on our turnkey.pro answer line.